almost the last sessions of CELTA. Can't believe we're almost to the end. So week 17. So this week was interesting because first I had to give a session while being assessed by the external assessor, and two of the candidates were being observed by the external assessor for quality control purposes. And yeah, so let me just dive into it. So we had input sessions as usual, the two sessions on Tuesday morning. The first session was on alternative methods and approaches. So it was kind of like a historical look at methods and approaches and things that have led up to now. So the tutor looked at main methods and approaches, historical view, implications in our practice. The session started out with making distinctions between approach, method, and methodology, which is sometimes confusing for some people. In the main room, then we went through the, so there was four words of terminology: approach, methodology, method, and technique. So then he looked specifically at the silent way, total physical response, grammar translation, and community language learning. He posted slides and asked the teacher's initial thoughts or experience with them. Then they had to read part of a lesson procedure and match the methods to the series of questions. And then he gave them an activity of a timeline of the methods and approaches, main characteristics, and time frames. So when they were popular or when they were used widely. And then they were instructed not to research, not to Google it. And then they worked in breakout rooms, discussed their guesses. And then, they had a video to watch. So they watched a video kind of that brought us through the timeline of these major trends that were going on. There's a brief discussion. And then we looked at three newer, right, methods and approaches: the flipped classroom, demand high, and the post method. I personally love demand high. I don't think enough people have heard of it. Sorry, motorcycle. Is there going to be a honk or no? I don't think enough people have heard of demand high. I don't think that it's Jim Scrivener and Adrian Underhill. I don't think that anybody has really, that either of those two who kind of came up with this idea, I don't think they've labeled it as a method, or they just kind of see it as a perspective. It's quite interesting. They've done a couple sessions for International House with the pedagogical coordinators of International House, and they're online on YouTube. So if you search for Demand High, Jim Scrivener and Adrian Underhill, and International House, something should pop up about them. It's quite interesting. It's more of a perspective than a method or a technique. I think it's quite a good one. I don't know how much further they have developed it since doing those seminars, but I think it's quite a good perspective. Anyways, to wrap up the session, the whole group shared information they found about these newer approaches and methods, and the tutor was offering some commentary to help clarify and exemplify some of the major concepts, because there were some misconceptions there. And then I had a session on which I was, I don't know, kind of excited about, but also kind of a little about using songs in the classroom. So kind of an offshoot of using authentic material. Here's why I was a little because I typically don't use songs. I deal with business people. Business people don't really like they're so worried about like performing in their jobs that they're not really super focused on having songs in their lessons, which is fine. Listen, when I taught general English, I use songs, but I typically don't use it. So it was good for me because it was like something that I typically don't do and getting me outside of my comfort zone. So I brought them through defining a linguistic purpose, not just using songs because they're fun. Right? Advantages and disadvantages of using songs to teach English. So we went through some planning frameworks and then some activities that they could do. At the end of it was like kind of like a 30-minute, like, no, it was a little bit longer than that. I would say it was probably like 45 minutes of kind of like an input session with like, breakout rooms and discussion and things like that. And then they had another 45 minutes where they were given a song, given a focus, and given a class level. And they had to plan. They had to develop the main aim, identify at least the target language and do target language analysis on one example of the target language, and then just kind of throw down a very basic outline procedure type of thing. And it was in a shared document so that they could then all use the 4 different songs, because it ranged from vocabulary to grammar. It was upper intermediate level, and then they could just use the lesson plans afterwards because they've created them. I chose to do it like that because of some of the submissions that we've had with the lesson planning, and I felt like they wanted and probably needed to have another activity to try and make them more comfortable doing language analysis and staging lessons. So, and it was fun because they're using authentic material, and so authentic material can be unruly, and they have to, kind of develop tasks along the way. Overall, it was good. So I was being assessed with that after the students, myself and the main course tutor left. The assessor stayed with nope, that didn't happen. Sorry, that happened on Thursday. On Tuesday, so the students left, they were done for the day, and then I stayed with the main course tutor and the assessor, and she gave me feedback on my session. Overall positive. One thing that I did learn, though, that from the discussion, she asked me to kind of like justify doing some things, and she said that the course that we had been running was very input heavy, and that typically the courses that she runs are less input heavy and more like workshop style. Now, I think there was a slight misconception because she saw like that we do 2 input sessions every Tuesday. So like for 3 hours, they're doing input sessions, and then they have their teaching practice and assisted lesson planning on Thursdays. And it looks as if it's just like a lot of input, but the way that the main course tutor, the regular tutor, and I followed the lead of them, we give input for like a certain amount of time, like I'll say like lecture style or webinar style, like input, but all of the input sessions, they have lots of practical activities, like they're doing lots of stuff. So they're not doing stuff necessarily related to the teaching practice that they're going to have, but they're building skills that they need to employ to be able to do the teaching practice stuff. So I thought it was interesting because apparently, and the way that this CELTA is being run is very similar to the way that I experienced CELTA. But apparently, the centers have much more flexibility in being able to do what they want to do, in terms of input sessions and how they create those. And yeah, it was It's interesting. So we don't necessarily have to follow a standard protocol. You need to address all of the topics that are in the CELTA 5 booklets, but you can do it in a way. You can do it in your own way. It's not there's not a standard protocol. They need to have input, but how the input is delivered is fully onto the tutors and the main course tutors. So I thought that was interesting that she said she typically does not have this style of input sessions. Now I did my CELTA in Brazil. These teachers, I'm doing this in a Brazilian institute. So the and she was from Eastern Europe. So perhaps cultural differences and yeah, it was just interesting. I was like, oh, okay. Because I've only had experience with Brazilian CELTAs. So then, then we had TP8s. So we had 3 people teaching. One person went in the morning, and then the second 2 sessions were assessed by the external assessor. So what happened here was I had to run it because the external assessor had to watch me run the TPs and then also give feedback. Yeah. So the first person went, and then the external assessor logged in, and then the second and third teachers taught their regular TPs, and I did the lesson observations all by myself. And then, so I had all of the notes and everything. And then they had a bit of a break, like 10, 15 minutes. They have to do their reflections and stuff like that. And then we had the feedback session, which I had to run independently as well. And in between, when they had the 15-minute break, I sat with the assessor and we discussed the feedback that I was planning on giving them. Overall, we had pretty much the same. I mean, she had only seen one of their lessons, so she doesn't really have like a lot of background. So I kind of filled her in on a little bit of the background of progress of the candidates that she had watched, and gave her the bullet points of what I was planning on giving them for feedback. And she agreed. And then I gave the feedback session. And then I left, and she stayed with the candidates. I think the other candidates logged in as well. I don't remember, to be honest. This was like a couple weeks ago because I'm recording this afterwards. I needed a break. She had stayed with the candidates and asked them about the course. So, and it was with all of the candidates. So all of the candidates were logged in. She had a session with them, asked them about the course, how it was run, how the support that they had, problems that they had, etc. Like getting feedback from them about the course. And then I stayed, and then the tutors logged back in, and we sat and talked about the grades, the final grades. She gave us the feedback from the candidates about how the course was run. Overall, it was positive in general. The candidates felt really, really supported. So that's was good to hear. There are some things that they would like to improve on, and next time, like things like specific resources for where, like in the input sessions, if we're quoting people, like they would want like the pictures of books or links to where to get the books and stuff like that. So, I mean, it was minor things, nothing that was detrimental to their progress. We went through their provisional grades, had a discussion on that. And that was it. Oh, and then I left, and the main course tutor stayed with the assessor because the main course tutor and the assessor had to decide whether or not I become a actual tutor. And so what that means was I have to Um, because there's many different tracks, and depending on the tutor and trainer's history, and depending on the performance and what you do, you can either like check good, you can start becoming like a full-fledged trainer, or nope, you need to do the training again. Or there's like one in between where it's like, yes, you can do it, but you still need like lots of guidance, but you're not really independent. It's still like you're in training, or you need extra sessions. So that's kind of that's the scenario. And so they discussed me. I don't know what happened. I had a discussion with the main course tutor afterwards. He seemed to be, I don't know, they're selling something on the street. I apologize if you hear. I don't get the whole selling on the street anymore. I don't know who's home besides me on my street, to be honest. Oh, it's a supermarket. So yeah, I don't get the whole idea of doing that, because a lot of people don't, like most moms and dads are working right now. Anyways, back to the main course tutor. The main course tutor had a chat with me. He said that he thought that I did well in the course, that I was completing the things that I needed to complete, and he felt confident in me. But that doesn't, she has to go through my portfolio and kind of look at whether or not she feels confident and trust me to start working independently. So, and I won't hear anything back for weeks about that. So that's kind of the wrapping up of the course. We do have one more week left, and so we'll be taking a look at that. And that's it for this week, for week 17. Next week is the wrapping up of the course. We do still have one person in each group to do TP8, and then there's some unassessed lessons. So I'll give you some feedback and information about that in the last video of this series. I'll see you again.